Chapter 1, The Hollow Morning Bell. It begins with the bell. Not the proud clang of holy summons, but a brittle, hollow sound, like iron tired of its own voice. It trembles once through the valley, then again, echoing across thatched roofs and frozen dirt paths. No one bows their heads in reverence. Not anymore. They know what it means now. The bell is not for prayer. It is for division. For the splitting of hunger. A barefoot boy is the first to reach the commons. His toes are blue with cold, his knees carry dried blood from a fall he can't remember. He stands beside the stone platform where food once arrived in wagons. Now, there's only a single wooden crate. Damp. Molded. Inside lie turnips, not fresh, not whole. Spoiled things with soft spots and bitter eyes. Still, they are sacred. Still, they are fought for. The crowd gathers in silence. No songs. No sermons. Only the sniffing of cold noses and the coughs of sickness woven into breath. Children clutch their stomachs like broken bowls. A man with no teeth tries to barter his boots. A widow offers a silver pin, her last, in exchange for what looks like half a potato but is in fact just a stone with dirt crusted thick. The parish priest arrives, cloaked in wool that once marked authority but now marks survival. He speaks not of God today. Only of order. One family at a time. No pushing. No screaming. There will be nothing extra. A mother steps forward. Her face is hollow, eyes shadowed in permanent dusk. Her baby is tied to her chest with a linen so thin the child could almost fall through it. She doesn't ask for food. She ties a strip of cloth tight around her own belly and prays only for the strength to outlive him, just long enough to bury him herself, should it come to that. A boy bites into a turnip skin, winces, spits blood. It is too rotten even for teeth, but he eats the inside anyway. An old man collapses after the third family is served. No one catches him. Tea. The crowd simply shifts, quietly, around his body. No one speaks the word famine aloud. It is treated like a spirit, summoned only if named. They say, the lean season, or the long hunger, or this wicked winter, as if by dressing it differently they might fool it into leaving early. But it does not leave. It never leaves. Behind the commons, the blacksmith's forge is quiet. His tools rust from disuse. No one can pay. No one needs horseshoes when there are no horses left. They were eaten in the first month. And now, the dogs are gone too. The bell rings again, not from the church now, but from the watchtower on the hill. A boy with straw hair waves a branch. Trouble. Raiders, maybe. Or simply beggars from the next village, driven here by the same emptiness. The guards don't know. They light a torch and seal the gates. Inside, the villagers huddle not in fear, but in resentment. More mouths. More need. Less to divide. A girl climbs the bell tower alone. She's 10, maybe 11. She pulls the rope not out of duty, but out of habit. Her hands are blistered. She stares down at the crowd like a saint painted in reverse, skin gray, hair tangled like roots. No gold halo. Only wind and dust. She remembers when the bell meant weddings. Bread tossed to the sky. Bells braided with ribbons. Her mother had danced barefoot around it once, drunk on joy and mead. Now, the girl pulls the rope in silence and watches no one smile. By dusk, the crate is empty. A woman licks the inside. Another gnaws the wood. In a side alley, a boy digs at the earth, hoping for a carrot that never sprouted. His sister offers a dead rat to the baker in exchange for a crust. The baker takes it with a blank face and hands her a wedge that smells of ash. They don't speak. There is no dignity left to protect. A child dies in the night. He is buried in the frost just behind the chapel wall, without prayer, without hymns. His father wraps him in a cloak once used for weddings. He does not cry. He digs fast, with stiff hands and a cracked spade. He finishes before the soil freezes again. The bell rings once more in the morning. As if time should still obey. And still, they come. Still, they wait. The spoiled turnips. The crusts. The silence. And beneath it all, one question no one dares speak aloud. What if this is not the worst of it? What if there's still further to fall? As the sun bleeds over the horizon like a wound too tired to close, the girl in the tower watches the sky turn gray again. She dreams not of summer, or even of spring. She dreams only of a bell that does not ring. A morning without echoes. A hunger that sleeps. Chapter 2, Boiled Leather and Dirt Broth. The smoke from the hearth curled low that night, not like a rising prayer, but like a dying breath. It clung to the beams and walls, heavy with the scent of rot and wet ash, curling around the hollow ribs of the desperate and the damned. Someone stirred the pot. Not in hope. Not in hunger. But in silence, as if by stirring, they might wake something long dead in the bottom, a memory of meat, a whisper of marrow. But there was no meat. Only the shriveled tongue of a boot, soaked until soft, boiling beside lichen, moss, and a pinch of salt so old it tasted like dust. The broth bubbled like a lie. Outside, the wind bit at the eaves. It howled through the cracks like a starving spirit searching for warmth. A girl sat cross-legged by the fire, her toes blue, her fingers trembling. She looked into the pot as if it might look back. "Is it soup?" she asked, her voice thin as parchment. Her father didn't answer at first. He couldn't. To name it would make it real. To name it would admit they'd crossed into the country beyond shame. So he nodded. "Aye," he said. "Soup." And turned his face away. She smiled, the way only a child could, still trusting, still believing that something warm, no matter how bitter, must mean they were safe. But he knew better. He knew the soup was lies. Boiled leather and wall moss. Once, even a scrap of old saddle, gnawed until the stitching came undone like veins beneath skin. They drank it anyway. Because it was hot. Because it was something. Because swallowing silence was worse. Each spoonful tasted of damp earth, of mold, of fields long dead. But still the pot emptied, and the girl licked the rim with a reverence priests might reserve for relics. Some nights, the broth turned reddish, faint and strange. No one asked why. The hunger blurred questions. And no one named the missing. A dog once. An old mutt with one ear and ribs like a ladder. It barked at ghosts and shadows, and then one day, it didn't. A chicken, too. The one with the crooked foot. It vanished from the pen during a storm. No feathers left. No bones. The village knew. They just didn't say. One night, by the flicker of firelight, a boy came in from the woods. His face scratched. His hands shaking. But his eyes, full. Not wide with terror, but with the knowing satisfaction of someone who had tasted too much. He sat down by the hearth. Didn't ask. Didn't wait. He pulled a strip of something from his pouch. Flesh. Fresh. He chewed slowly. And no one stopped him. No one asked what it was. But when he turned his head, there was red along his jaw. Streaked down his neck like paint. Like guilt. Or pride. And the room went still. The wind outside screamed, but no one inside moved. The only sound was the boiling pot, whispering its secrets. This was dinner now. A ritual of shame, not sustenance. Every bowl was a confession, every swallow a surrender. Mothers learned to lie sweetly. "Close your eyes," they'd say. Pretend it's stew, like before. Before the frost. Before the blight. Before the soldiers took the grain and the taxmen took the rest. Fathers wept where their children couldn't see. Hiding behind smoke, behind excuses, behind worn-out prayers that no longer reached heaven. Even the church was silent now. Its bell rang still, but not for worship. Only to mark the hour of distribution, when the last sack of grain was shaken out onto cold stone, and the villagers scratched at it like birds in winter. A woman once boiled her wedding dress. The silk had long rotted, but the wool lining, she said, might give something. She didn't tell anyone what it tasted like. Only that she couldn't bear to keep it any longer, not while her daughter's belly cried louder than words. They burned the shoes of the dead. Not to mourn, but to eat. They tore the leather soles apart and boiled them until the water turned dark, thick with the bitterness of footsteps no longer taken. In some cottages, the walls wept with damp. The moss grew thicker there, and they scraped it with spoons. Dried it near the fire. Ground it like herbs. When mixed with bark and rainwater, it became bread. And when it didn't kill them, it was called a blessing. Those who refused to eat, faded. Not quickly. Slowly. Like candlelight in a storm. They stared longer at the wall. Slept deeper. Shivered harder. And then, nothing. No noise. No movement. Just another body for the cart. And fewer mouths to feed. But the worst part was not the eating. The worst part was what it did to the heart. Men stopped speaking to one another. Women no longer sang. Even laughter, when it came, sounded like coughing. Hunger did not just gnaw the body, it chewed through memory. What did a feast even taste like? What did bread feel like between the fingers? What did joy sound like when not followed by silence? These questions haunted them more than death. Because hunger, unlike death, never ended. It stayed. It hollowed. It lingered. And when the last pot was scraped clean, and there was nothing left to pretend with, they still sat by the fire. Waiting. Stirring nothing. Listening to the wind. And praying, for sleep, if not salvation. That night, a young girl lay on her side, watching the dying coals. Her father's hand rested on her back, heavy with sorrow. "Will there be food tomorrow?" she asked. He hesitated. Then whispered the only truth he had left. "There will be something." And in the silence that followed, something moved in the shadows outside. A crack of twigs. A footstep. Or a warning. Because even darker hungers had begun to stir in the woods beyond. Not just wolves. But men. And what comes next, does not belong to the living. Fade to black. The wind rises. Chapter 3, The Thief's Fingers. The square is silent, save for the sound of rope rubbing against raw wood. A boy stands barefoot on frozen earth, his breath shallow, eyes wide, not with guilt, but confusion. His fingers twitch. A single mold-spotted apple lies broken at his feet, its bruised flesh glinting in the low morning light like something sacred, defiled. Someone spits. The villagers gather as shadows, wrapped in rags, leaning on sticks, wrapped in silence. Hunger has taken their weight, and now it takes their mercy. The wind moves through them like a blade, slicing through cloaks and skin and the soft folds of memory. They do not speak. They have all seen theft before. But not like this. Not in daylight. Not with a child. He cannot be more than 10. 2 men, gaunt as scarecrows, drag the boy forward. One holds him. The other carries a stone the size of a heart. A voice rises from the steps of the church, cracked like the frost beneath their boots. He is not punished for hunger, the village elder says. He is punished for disobedience. The elder's face is hollow. His eyes glisten, not with grief, but with shame. He is not speaking to the crowd. He is speaking to himself. Justifying. The boy does not beg. He looks at his fingers as if they belong to someone else. Then the rock falls. Once. Twice. A sharp crack. Then a scream that doesn't sound human. Then silence again. The boy collapses in his mother's arms. She had stepped forward only after the stone had done its work. She does not speak. She does not fight. She simply kneels, cradles him, and rocks slowly in the dirt, her head pressed to his as he sobs in broken gasps. The elder turns away. Even the crows, gathered along the rooftops, fall quiet. That night, the fire in the mother's hut burns low. Not from lack of wood, but from mourning. The boy's hand is wrapped in linen, soaked in melted snow. His fingers bend like broken twigs, swollen and darkening at the tips. She whispers to him. "Shoo. It was only an apple. It's gone now." She kisses his hair. What she does not say, what she cannot say, is that she knows the orchard well. The tree that bore that moldy fruit still grows beyond the fence, half dead but clinging. And 2 nights before, it was her hand that reached through frost and thorn and found that same apple. Her steps had been lighter. Her breath slower. And luck had spared her. The boy pays her price. Outside, a dog barks once. Then no more. The village watches its own decay with averted eyes. Children learn to chew bark and not cry. The chapel candles burn shorter each night, their wax taken for warmth. And somewhere, someone sharpens a blade, not for protection, but for trade. Law, once wrapped in scripture and oath, has become barter. A wheel of cheese is worth a daughter's hand. A clean shawl, a promise of safety. No justice remains, only transaction. And yet, the stones still fall. Not to preserve order, but to maintain the illusion of it. The boy's hand will never heal fully. 3 fingers turn black within days. They do not fall off, but they do not bend either. They become a symbol. His body now carries the village's hunger. Some call him cursed. Others, brave. But all avert their gaze. He does not speak much after. Only hums, some evenings. A tune his father once played on a wooden flute before the fever took him. A tune with no words. Only sorrow. His mother watches from the doorway. Sometimes, she presses her own hands together tightly, fingers curled inward, imagining what it would feel like to have them crushed. To feel the pain he felt. To trade places. But pain is not transferable. Not in famine. Not in grief. Not in this world, where survival is the only god left unbroken. One morning, weeks later, a girl is caught with a strip of dried meat tucked beneath her sleeve. She is not beaten. Instead, she is taken to the edge of the woods and left there, her arms bound with twine. They do not kill her. But they do not let her return. She becomes a story whispered to other children. The rules change with the hunger. The crimes are the same. The punishments, evolving. The boy sees her from the hill one evening, limping between tree trunks, her dress shredded. He doesn't wave. He doesn't call out. He only watches. Then lowers his head and hums. And still, the orchard tree remains. Leafless. With one last apple, black and shriveled, hanging from a dying branch. Some say it's cursed. Others say it's waiting. The wind does not choose sides. It moves through the village, the orchard, the church, carrying with it the scent of rot and cold and guilt. One day, the elder is found dead in his bed, his mouth frozen open mid-breath. Some call it age. Others, justice. But no one claims the body. It is buried quickly, beneath stone and frost, with no prayer. No one has the words anymore. And as the boy stands near the grave, his hand wrapped and withered, he does not cry. He simply watches the sky, where snow begins to fall, not soft, but sharp, like ash from a dying fire. And in that pale, heavy silence, the hunger deepens. Not just in bellies, but in hearts. And what comes next, will test the soul itself. The wind does not knock, it seeps. Under doors. Through cracks. Past cloth. Into bones. And on this morning, it brought with it the scent of death, thick and sweet, like spoiled fruit left beneath the sun. Inside the cottage, there is no movement. Only stillness, and the soft, rhythmic sound of breath that is not quite breathing, but holding on. He lies in the corner, shrouded in sackcloth, the cloth stiff now with frost and dried sweat. What once was a man, her man, now slouches as if sleep had caught him mid-prayer. But sleep had long fled this house. Death had come in quietly. It had no voice. It did not knock. It simply sat down, and stayed. She sits beside him, back crooked, fingers locked around his, those same hands that once lifted her up from a stream, years ago, when laughter still spilled from their lips like milk from cracked jugs. His fingers are cold now. So cold, she presses them against her own chest to warm them, knowing it is useless. Still, she does it. The floor beneath them is packed earth, frozen stiff. There is no burial yet. The ground refuses her. The thaw has not come. Outside, the world shrinks. Villagers pass the hut and glance toward it, but do not stop. They know the smell. They've buried too many of their own, or worse, left them unburied. Some pretend they do not see the faint curl of smoke still rising from her chimney. Others whisper, she's still sitting there. Still holding his hand. Still waiting. She has not wept. Not loudly. Only once, when she tried to move his body and the joints cracked like breaking twigs. After that, she just watched the wall. One brick has a crack. She counts how many days since the rat stopped coming. On the third day, the priest returns. He does not knock. He simply pushes the door open with a trembling hand and leans in. His robes are stained, not with blood, but with the grease of too many shared meals from too little food. His skin is gray with hunger. Even his voice has hollowed out. God is near, he says, as though that means anything now. He blesses the air with a trembling hand. The smell hits him like a blow. Still, he does not cover his nose. She does not look at him. He steps closer, eyes watering, and murmurs words in Latin, words that once brought peace, now fluttering uselessly in the choking air. Have you bread? He asks softly, not out of greed, but desperation. She shakes her head. He nods. It is the only truth he expects anymore. There is a silence then, long, and aching. He wants to offer a burial, a grave, but he can barely stand. His own shovel was stolen weeks ago, traded for goat's milk and a candle that burned out in 2 hours. So he does what he can. He blesses the flies that buzz around the corpse's eyes, as if they, too, carry souls. Then he turns and leaves, one step at a time, as if each limb no longer believes in moving. Night comes. She remains. When the winds grow stronger, she wraps him tighter. She hums a lullaby, not for him, but for herself, recalling the way he once sang to the hens as he fed them, the ridiculous little tune that always made her laugh. Now there are no hens. No singing. Only the wind, and the waiting. Somewhere far off, a dog howls. It sounds like a child in pain. She closes her eyes, presses her forehead to his, and for one brief moment, pretends his lips moved. They didn't. But memory is stubborn. Memory lies, kindly. On the 5th day, something shifts. The snow outside begins to weep, not melt, not yet, but soften at the edges. Water drips from the thatch above, tapping on the windowpane like hesitant fingers. She stirs. She rises slowly, joints crackling. The world tilts as she stands, her blood so thin it protests movement. She opens the door. The earth, still hard, still bitter, but there. Not forgiving, but listening. She takes a spade, rusted and dull, from behind the stove. It's too small for a grave. It's a child's tool. But she does not look for another. She drags his body, slowly, reverently, through the threshold. The sackcloth snags on the doorway. She pauses, adjusts it. She does not let his face touch the mud. She begins to dig. The ground resists. Her hands bleed. Her breath comes sharp. She mutters prayers not to saints, but to worms, to roots, to the cold stone below. Take him gently. Each shovelful is a chapter of their life. This is the well he dug when she first came here. This is the soil where he buried their stillborn son. This is the patch where spring onions once grew. By dusk, the hole is barely deep enough. It will have to do. She lays him down without ceremony, but not without care. She places a sprig of rosemary over his heart, brown and brittle now, but once green, fragrant. No cross. No bell. No chant. Just silence. And then, she stands. One final time. And walks back inside. She does not shut the door. The wind is welcome now. Let it come. Let it carry him. Let it sweep the memory of warmth across his resting place. As night thickens, the fire dies. And somewhere far away, a cart creaks through the woods, heavy with bodies from another village. Plague or hunger, it no longer matters. The stench is the same. Tomorrow, she will help dig again. And the chapter will not be hers alone. But tonight she sleeps beside the absence. Her eyes open in the dark. And somewhere in her chest, a hollow ache whispers. Who will bury me? The frost creeps back in. And the ground waits. The wind had no voice, until the second month. It spoke now in broken whispers, through the cracks of rotting shutters, across the soot-streaked beams, beneath the blood-smeared thatch where ravens perched and waited. The snow had melted, but the earth did not forgive. It stayed hard, bitter, unbreaking. And in that silence, the village began to dream, with open eyes. In a home that once rang with laughter, a little girl sat cross-legged by the hearth. No fire burned there now, just a crust of old ash, and a shadow shaped like memory. Her breath hung in the cold air as she watched the smoke that wasn't there. Then she smiled. I see her, she whispered, as if to no one. I see her dancing. The child reached forward, fingers trembling from cold or wonder. Across from her, her mother wept into her palms, silently, so the girl would not hear. The sister the child saw had been gone for weeks. Buried beneath the snow, or lost to the wolves. No one knew. But the girl spoke to her daily, in soft tones, as if the dead had merely stepped out and returned, wearing a cloak made of mist. Elsewhere, a boy crouched beside a windowsill where sunlight once landed like gold. He cradled a lump of hard crust, more mold than bread. His lips moved. Yes, mother, he said. I'll come soon. I'll wash my hands first. Like always. The crust was wrapped in linen, as if it were sacred. He had found it beneath the bed, fallen there in better times. Now, he wouldn't eat it. Not yet. He feared what might vanish when he did. The hunger had grown clever. It no longer screamed, it sang. It curled inside the stomach like a sleeping snake and whispered strange stories to the mind. Old saints had called it fasting. But the villagers had no word left for what this was. When God goes quiet and the belly cries loud, it is not prayer that answers. A woman with gray in her hair and mud on her skirts clawed at the floor of her flooded cellar. She had not spoken in days, not since her youngest died choking on acorns. Her hands scraped the stone, nails broken back to the skin. Then, there, beneath a sheet of mold the color of nightshade, grain. Ancient. Foul. She wept and laughed in the same breath as she devoured it. She chewed until her gums split. Her mouth foamed black. Still she ate. Her son's voice echoed in her mind, "Mama, that's for the pigs." But the pigs had been slaughtered weeks ago. Only the squealing remained, and it lived inside her head. The elders said these were hunger dreams, fevered ghosts born of emptiness. But even the elders no longer met by the fire. They sat alone now, eyes wide in the dark, speaking to faces that were not there. One man stood in the fields at dawn, arms raised to the sky, his skin dusted white with frost. He whispered names. Not prayers. Names. A litany of the dead. Another was found trying to milk a wooden statue of the Virgin. He swore the breast had been warm. In the chapel, the crucifix had been taken down, not stolen, but buried. The priest said it was better that way. He could not bear to look at it. Not now. Not while God watched and did nothing. At night, the moans began. Not screams. Not howls. Just the soft, endless moans of the starved, not quite dead, not quite human. Mothers biting their own sleeves. Fathers rocking on their heels, eyes fixed on a corner of the wall. The children heard them. The children mimicked them. It was not madness. It was memory breaking. They saw things no one should. A man spoke of a feast at the edge of the woods, silver platters, golden meats. He wandered in, barefoot, laughing. He never returned. The searchers found only his cloak, hung neatly on a branch. No blood. No bones. Only footprints that led nowhere. And still, some tried to hold the line between what was real and what was hunger's lie. A midwife wrapped her head in linen to silence the voices. "They can't get in if I'm deaf to them," she said, stuffing moss into her ears. Her niece found her days later, rocking beside the well, eyes full of spiders. There were none on her. Even the animals knew. Dogs no longer barked. Cats vanished. The rats walked openly, unafraid, as if they, too, had been crowned. In the baker's old home, where the oven had long gone cold, someone drew loaves on the wall with soot. Rows and rows of perfect bread. A little shrine of false comfort. Each day someone added more, as if drawing bread could feed them. They said it was just the hunger talking. But the hunger never stopped talking. It spoke in dry coughs and bleeding gums, in shaking hands and sunken cheeks. It spoke when the girl kissed the air where her sister had stood. It spoke when the boy bowed to his crust of bread. It spoke when a woman ate mold until her mouth turned black. And it spoke when the priest threw away his god. The village no longer mourned the dead. They feared the living more. A man with a knife carved prayers into his own skin, trying to draw the demons out. Another sharpened a spoon and whispered, for the next thief. There were no more apples to steal. Only madness. A mother, gaunt and hollow, held her baby and sang lullabies to bones. The child had died 3 days before, but she rocked it still, pressing its frozen cheek to hers. "Sleep now," she crooned. "Sleep. You'll wake when the bread comes." No one stopped her. They didn't dare. Because they, too, had heard the lullaby. Because they, too, had danced with ghosts in the hearth smoke. Because they, too, had knelt before a crust of bread and begged it not to vanish. The snow was returning now, falling soft and slow. Covering the madness with mercy's illusion. And beneath the flurries, one boy knelt in the mud, drawing a picture of a door. Not to escape. But to let something in. The next chapter begins when the doors finally open, when the desperate take up arms not against nature, but each other. And all that was madness, becomes law. Chapter 5, hunger dreams and fevered ghosts 1150 words. A scream curls up through the chimney smoke, thin and bird-like. It is not a scream of terror, but of joy, sharp, high, and cracked, as if it forgot how to be joyful. A child runs barefoot across the frost-laced stones, chasing nothing. Her dress is in tatters, her lips blue, but her eyes are bright with some private miracle. She reaches into the air, clutches at it, giggles, and whispers, "You came back." There is no one there. In the corners of the starving village, the living now walk with the dead. They don't always recognize which is which. By the second month of famine, silence becomes too loud to bear. So the mind begins to fill it, like a cracked bowl trying to hold back floodwater. The people dream with their eyes open. They speak to things that do not answer. They mistake wind for whispers, snowflakes for signs. Their bones rattle beneath their skin like coins in a beggar's purse, and their souls, whatever still clings, float somewhere between prayer and madness. Inside one hut, a girl sits beside the hearth, staring into the smoke that curls upward like a ghost seeking freedom. Her hair is thin and clumped with ash. Her breath fogs as she leans closer, whispering songs only her sister used to know. A shape dances in the flames, soft, feminine, swaying. It turns toward her, all warmth and memory. The girl reaches out. She calls her by name. But her sister has been dead for 3 weeks. Buried shallowly beneath frozen loam, not far from the cow shed. Some say it's the fever. Others say it's the hunger. But in truth, the line between the two is blurring. As bellies shrink and skin grows gray, the village no longer speaks in the language of reason. Only in echoes. Echoes of what was once real. A boy sits cradling a rock in his arms, cradling it as if it were swaddled. He sings to it in a low, broken hum, eyes distant. Someone approaches, his aunt, or what's left of her, and asks what he's holding. He looks up. "Bread," he says. "She made me bread." And he smiles. It had been 4 days since his mother died. He had not spoken until now. They tried to bury her. But the ground refused. So they laid her beneath pine boughs and snow, and called it done. No prayers. No bells. Only the soft sound of ice settling in her open mouth. There are stories, now. Not the kind told by firelight in better winters, but whispered warnings, half-truths, half-superstition. A man claimed he saw a pale horse in the woods, and behind it, a procession of hollow-eyed women dressed in veils of frost. The famine rides now, he said, before biting into a piece of bark and chewing it like meat. Another woman, delirious from rotgut and grief, dug into a flooded cellar where old grain had turned to black mush. She shoved handful after handful into her mouth, gagging and weeping, until her gums bled red into the mold. "It tastes like my wedding bread," she mumbled between mouthfuls, "just a little salter." She died 2 days later, bloated and twisted. But she died smiling. The priest no longer comes to the chapel. It stands empty, its windows broken by storm. Instead, he wanders the fields, muttering Latin beneath his breath like a spell. He has not shaved. His robes hang from him like funeral cloth. When asked why he no longer prays with the people, he replies softly, "Because they are no longer here. Only their shadows remain." In some homes, the hunger takes stranger shapes. Children lick stones, imagining them as apples. Old men suck their own thumbs like babes. One woman boiled leather shoes and drank the broth. Another tried to eat her husband's hair while he slept. A child's laugh, once pure, now sounds like madness echoing off walls. Hope has changed its color. It no longer shines gold, like sunlight through chapel glass. Now it flickers in strange places, like the flicker of a candle found in a forgotten drawer, or a broken spoon that still stirs the memory of stew. One night, in the deeper dark, a man rose from his bed, if a pile of rags counts as such, and walked barefoot into the woods. They found him 3 days later, naked beneath a tree, humming lullabies to a crow perched on his finger. He had fed it his own flesh. When asked why, he said simply, "It was hungry." Then wept. There is something the old women say, those who've survived famines before, famines of childhood, of plague, of siege. They say the body can be tricked. If you tell it enough stories, it will forget it's dying. So now, mothers tell their children bedtime tales of full bellies and warm porridge, while pressing cold fingers against their lips to shush their growling stomachs. Fathers speak of feasts that will come in the spring, though their eyes are empty as root cellars. But the children know. Even the smallest ones. Because when sleep comes, it brings dreams not of meadows, but of meat. Raw, red, dripping. They wake licking their own lips, ashamed. The hunger is in them now, not just in their bellies, but in their bones, in their blood, in their dreams. It speaks in 1,000 voices. And it never stops talking. One widow, too proud to beg, too stubborn to starve, built a shrine in her home to her lost husband. She set out the last of her grain beside it, not to eat, but to honor. She lit a candle. Knelt. Prayed. The wind blew the door open, and with it came 3 stray dogs. They devoured the offering and left her untouched. She took that as a blessing. Or a curse. She hasn't spoken since. The days no longer feel like days. There is no sun, only smoke. No clocks, only the aching rhythm of empty stomachs and endless waiting. Time itself has become a ghost, unseen, but always present. And in the stillness, something begins to shift. Not hope. Not yet. But something quieter. A flicker. A silence that isn't hollow. A breath that doesn't rattle. Perhaps it is the beginning of endurance. Or madness in its most merciful form. The snow begins to melt, just slightly. A single drip echoes from the edge of a roof, falling into mud below. And in that drip, a sound not heard in weeks. Movement. Something is coming. Not salvation. But the next chapter of this quiet devastation. And the hunger will follow it. Chapter 6, When the Soldiers Came. A drumbeat in the fog. Not loud. Not urgent. Just steady. Cold. Certain. At first, the village thought it was thunder. A low grumble carried over frost-bitten fields. But then came the iron clink. Boots on rock. Harnesses creaking. Voices, not of plague or prayer, but of men who still had full bellies. The king's men had arrived. Not with war banners or bleeding swords. They came with scrolls, with stamps, with lists of names and tithes. They came wearing the lion's sigil over wool that had not been patched. And they came hungry. Not for food. For obedience. The people had none left to give. The children were the first to move. Heads peering from under broken carts, from rafters where rats had nested. One child stepped too close. A soldier, without breaking stride, shoved him aside with a gauntlet hand. The boy hit the stone wall like a sack of mud-soaked grain. No one cried out. Not even him. The baker's daughter stood just beyond the well. Her apron, once white, was now a tapestry of ash and flour and tears. She had not baked in weeks. There was no wheat, no yeast, only the memory of bread. "Please," she whispered. Not a cry. Not a scream. Just a word laid gently on a blade. "If it is flesh you need in place of grain, I offer mine." The soldiers laughed. Not out of cruelty, but boredom. One reached out and touched her cheek, not as a man, but as a collector appraising a trinket. "Keep your skin, girl. We'll take the barley. The last sack. Hidden beneath the elder's bed. Sown from the spring rains and guarded like a secret. Enough to plant. Enough, maybe, to begin again. They took it. Didn't ask. Didn't thank. They lifted it with a grunt and walked away. The snow fell harder that evening. Not gently, angrily. It slapped the rooftops and turned the ash in the hearth cold. Inside the elder's hut, silence grew roots. He stood beneath the nailed tax notice. Red wax seal. Royal crest. Unyielding demands. He stared as if reading a curse. Then, slowly, he reached for it. With both hands, he tore it down. No ceremony. No words. He carried it to the hearth, now dying with coals, and set it atop the embers. It hissed. Then curled. The ink bled like wounds. The seal bubbled, melted. The room filled with a bitter smoke. Not the smell of parchment. But of betrayal. Like burning trust. Like scorched faith. Like the stink of loyalty gone sour. No one saw him cry. But those who passed his hut later said he spoke to no one for days. Only sat, staring into the black stone, where fire once danced. By morning, something had shifted. The cold was sharper. The wind moved differently. Like the land itself had decided not to wait for kings anymore. A young widow gathered her children and hid them in the woods. The old bell ringer stopped ringing. The baker's daughter, her cheeks hollow with hunger, began sharpening her bread knife, not for dough, but for the door. And the men who once called themselves peasants, who had bowed and scraped and traded dignity for scraps, looked out over the frozen fields and saw not snow, but a battlefield. Not of swords. Of silence. Of refusal. The kind of war fought by people who've lost too much to be afraid. The soldiers would return. With lists. With more scrolls. With fire, if needed. But something had already ignited. Not in the hearth. In the hearts of those left behind. Something older than law. Something harder than tax. A promise made with nothing left to give. That night, the stars blinked behind clouds like eyes behind veils. And beneath them, the village dreamed not of bread. But of revenge. Just a spark, tucked behind grief. A beginning. And far away, in the woods beyond the frost, a mother whispered into her son's ear. Don't speak their names. Don't bend your head. The snow will melt. And when it does, we rise.